I think it's time I step in here to help mediate an ongoing debate which has been rapidly spreading across the internet. I feel compelled to make this video because recently there's been a wave of propaganda against this movement. This video is intended to give you guys a brief overview of the reasons and concepts that has radically changed a lot of people's worldview. I'm going to be honest here, this is a difficult subject to present because of the visceral reactions that come with it. Mocking, name-calling, ridicule, anger. Quite frankly, it's uncalled for. The ultimate goal of this video is to help spread compassion to those that we affect, in real life and those on the web. Society could really use more compassion these days. Alright, brace yourselves, as this may come to a shock to many of you. For those of you who may not be aware, there is a massively growing community of people out there who are utterly convinced that the earth is flat. This has got to be a joke, right? They can't be serious. As silly and outrageous that this may sound, it is not a joke. For many, their initial response to hearing such a notion goes something like, are these people living in the olden days? How have they missed all the proofs and science that shows that the earth is round? Do they just deny all the pictures of the earth? Don't they know that no one's ever fallen off the edge? The idea of a flat and motionless earth is growing extremely fast, with hundreds of thousands of people forming communities, groups, meetup events, billboards, posting memes, writing books, and even full-blown international conferences. Flat Earth is huge and it's growing, but why? I'm going to present to you what I feel are some of the most compelling reasons that cause people to believe in a flat earth cosmology. Basically, this is going to be a condensed version of how and why people have become a flat earther. I felt it was necessary to create this video based upon the wealth of misinformation out there. I am finding that those who are rejecting the flat earth model don't even know what they are rejecting. Most don't even understand the flat earth model, as silly as it may sound at first. There are many people who will refuse to have this conversation because of the absurdity of the idea. To many people, they feel that this conversation is below and beneath them and a complete waste of time. Which is exactly why we will be discussing this today. Before we get started, I just wanted to say that this video does not aim to sway your opinion in any way. It merely serves to give you an understanding of how and why people have come to such conclusions. To those people who have already looked into flat earth, I reckon to be careful or give this video a chance because it's quite possible you've only seen the propaganda. It is difficult these days to find legitimate and real flat earth discussion and videos online. Google, the media, social media giants like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and other large media platforms have openly stated that they will censor and remove videos which discuss the flat earth. And they have been doing so vigilantly, while leaving up videos which are disinformation or there to make it look silly. Now, before we begin, remember that this subject will be drastically different from what you've been brought up to believe. You have to remember that the globe model is a core belief, something that we have believed from as young as we can remember. It will take some effort to wrap your head around this new idea. When alternate viewpoints to deeply rooted beliefs are questioned, it can rile up emotions. Please try not to get emotional. It is not my intention to rile emotions. Just know we are not signing any contract or accepting any new beliefs. We're merely investigating why a large group of people have come to believe in such a widespread growing idea. So, for the next 60 minutes, I ask you to temporarily suspend your belief system. Be able to entertain an idea without openly accepting it. Oh, and just one more thing. Feel free to pause this video if there's any text on the screen. I know it can be hard to listen to me and read text at the same time. Let's begin with what the flat earth looks like. First of all, flat earth is not this, or this, or this. These type of photos are deliberately created to make the flat earth look silly, and to program you to think this when someone mentions the flat earth. A lot of people like to think that space, as they currently know it, just replaces the earth with a flat disk, sort of like this. This couldn't be further from what the flat earth model actually is. In actuality, the most widely accepted flat earth model looks more like this. Let me begin by briefly explaining the differences between a flat Earth and a globe Earth. The model that most people have been brought up to believe is a heliocentric cosmology. Helio meaning sun. Heliocentric is a sun-centered cosmology. This system has the Earth along with the other planets orbiting the sun. When the Earth is at the center, it's called a geocentric cosmology. Geo meaning of the Earth. All flat earthers follow a geocentric cosmology because they have the Earth at the center, with the stars, sun, moon rotating around us. In a geocentric cosmology, the Earth is fixed, solid, and unmovable. It's much different from a heliocentric cosmology because we are not moving at all. Everything above us is moving instead. The key differences between these two models is whether the Earth moves or not. In the geocentric model, the Earth is stationary and everything moves around us as it appears from our perspective. In the heliocentric model, everything is moving, including the Earth. In the flat Earth model, the Earth is a circle and the North Pole is in the middle. The Sun is not 93 million miles away and is instead relatively close. The Sun and Moon both make predictable circles around the magnetic North Pole, sort of like hands on a clock. The Sun acts as a spotlight and is only able to shine its light on a portion of the plane at a time. Then, we have a ring of ice all the way around the circle holding in the world's oceans. This ring of ice is Antarctica. On the ball Earth model, Antarctica is this continent at the bottom of the ball. Yet in this model, it's all around you as a ring of ice. Antarctica all the way around. This Antarctic ice wall is about 100 to 200 feet tall all around. When you climb up on the wall, it's a plateau of ice which goes on and on and on. Where's the edge? Where is the edge? This is such a great question. A lot of people like to think that the Earth has an edge, as depicted in photos like this, and this, and this. Before I explain where the edge is in a flat Earth model, let me ask, where's the edge in a heliocentric model? The most commonly accepted theory on the ball Earth model on what is beyond the edge of space isn't really known amongst scientists. They don't really know. It doesn't seem fair to have an answer for one question when we don't have an answer for the other. Scientists on both sides of the discussion aren't really sure, but they both do have some theories though. Let me just get this out there. Edges are hard. Space or flat, both are hard to explain. Both models, whether heliocentric or geocentric, simply do not know what or where the edge is and what's beyond it. And that's okay. I personally would rather not know than know the wrong thing. In my view, the edge of a physical realm is a hard concept for us to grasp, whether flat or round. With that being said, there sort of is an edge though, or what I would call the nearest edge. That would be Antarctica. If an edge exists, it is beyond Antarctica, which is off limits. How far and long does the ice go on for? There isn't really a firm answer to this question at the moment. Some people speculate that the ice eventually reaches some sort of dome barrier that many ancient cultures seem to suggest. Both the Holy Bible and the Quran seem to suggest a flat Earth cosmology with a firmament or dome above us. Others speculate that the ice goes on for quite a ways and could possibly lead to more pods, which we are one of many. There are others who think that the ice goes on infinitely and it's just darkness, snow, and ice as far as we can tell. Some people think that there are more continents, more land that is being hidden from us, where other civilizations could live. What is beyond the ice wall of Antarctica is open to speculation at this point in time. It's worth mentioning that most flat earthers postulate that the Earth has a dome or firmament above us. The idea of a dome also parallels with many ancient cultures' mythologies, religious texts, and scriptures. I know. This part sounds pretty strange if it's the first time you're hearing this. A dome above us? Really? When I first heard this, I thought it was quite ridiculous myself. But there are reasons to support this idea, and to me, it's one of the most interesting parts about the flat Earth. In a future video, we can get into how rainbows only work outside and how sun halos support a dome, the physics of gas pressure systems, and the many ancient cultures mentioning of a firmament to describe some evidence which supports the idea of a dome. This here is Encyclopedia Americana from 1958. This was before the Antarctic Peace Treaty, which took effect in 1959. This encyclopedia says that there's a dome at the 80-degree parallel in Antarctica at about 13,000 feet high. I'd like to point out that travel below the 60-degree parallel is strictly prohibited. Flat Earthers hypothesized that the dome would be short near Antarctica and much higher near the main continents. So, on the subject of a dome, Flat Earthers are arguing that government rockets like NASA always curve and do not go straight up, because if they did, they would hit the dome. Rockets are always done near the ocean, where some rockets cannot be seen landing into the ocean. While we're on this subject, I'd like to briefly show you a video which has been circulating across the Flat Earth community. This is of a rocket that goes straight up instead of curving. Some Flat Earthers are proclaiming that this civilian rocket actually hits the dome. The Civilian Space Exploration Team is a team of around 30 civilians who have an interest in rockets. They are a non-governmental civilian group of citizens who were able to fund and build their own rocket, which was used to set a world record for the highest altitude achieved by a civilian rocket. In short, a non-governmental group of civilians sent a rocket up higher than any amateurs have in the past. The rocket they launched abruptly stopped spinning at a certain point. As far as I'm aware, this video is real and has not been doctored in any way. A lot of Flat Earthers are saying that the rocket stopped because it hit some sort of dome or barrier. The answers are far and wide on what the barrier could be made of, ranging from liquid to plasma to some sort of dense medium. Globe proponents are saying that the rocket stopped because of a yo-yo despin mechanism built into the rocket. Flat Earthers are having a hard time believing that such a rocket could stop so suddenly from cables, and it doesn't seem intuitive to build extra weight into a rocket which is trying to achieve a high altitude record. They're also skeptical because of the two cameras on the rocket failed to film any of this despin mechanism. It also took several years for the Civilian Space Exploration Team to give a response about the despin mechanism after this video caused a commotion on the internet. In my opinion, this video is not proof of a dome or a firmament, and more tests should be done like this in order to form more of a general conclusion. I am hopeful that over time, more awareness can be brought to this subject so we can perform more tests like these, to add more data to the scientific community. The next reason that Flat Earthers use to support their claims has to do with the horizon. When independent, non-governmental weather balloons are sent up with cameras on them, something interesting happens. The first thing is that the horizon always remains flat no matter how high up these balloons go. These balloons are going up as high as 33 miles. That's 170,000 feet. The clip being displayed right now shows an independent balloon reaching an altitude of 120,000 feet, or 22 miles straight up. Notice what the horizon looks like here, and here, and here, and here. Not only does the horizon appear flat, more importantly, it always remains level with the camera. No matter how high up you rise in elevation, the horizon will always be level with your eyes, or camera in this case. If the Earth were a ball, no matter how big, the horizon would stay fixed, and we would rise above as we ascended. Instead, the horizon remains at eye level as we gain altitude, no matter how high up we go. You won't see videos like these on television or on the media because it contradicts what you've been taught in school, and what NASA shows us. Flat Earthers claim that the only time we see curvature is in NASA photos and videos, where they are using a fisheye lenses or video effects to distort the horizon to give it a curve. Probably the biggest piece of evidence that flat earthers use to support their beliefs is the lack of measurable curvature in this Earth. Balls curve. If Earth is a ball or sphere, then Earth must curve. And if it curves, then we can measure this curve over a distance. Flat earthers suggest that there's no curvature. In Explain Like I'm 5 version, we can simply see too far. If the Earth were a ball, then things far away would not be visible because they would be behind or below the curve of the Earth. This has been tested over and over again, and the Earth simply does not have any measurable curvature. Here is a slightly more technical Explain Like I'm 12 version. The Earth is purported to be about 25,000 miles in circumference. This means we can measure this curvature to verify this claim. That formula is 8 inches per mile squared. This means for 1 mile, there's an 8-inch drop in curvature, and for 2 miles, 32 inches. This grows exponentially as the miles go further out. In this diagram, it shows that there should be 42 feet of curvature at only 8 miles. The gap starts small, but grows the further you go out. At 40 miles, there should be over 1,000 feet of curvature. This is a news broadcast that was taken from Michigan. This made the news because the atmospheric conditions were just right on this day where people could see Chicago across Lake Michigan.
We typically would not be able to see this from the Lake Michigan shore. We talked about this last night. Conditions are right on the lake that we're actually seeing a mirage of the Chicago skyline.
At a distance of 52 miles, the skyline of Chicago could be seen. There should be about 1,800 feet of curvature at this distance. The entire skyline should be under the Earth's curvature. We should not see any buildings at all. The media claims this to be a mirage, but flat earthers are not buying it. They claim that mirages look more like this. Or this.
And we're also going to be seeing a lot of sunshine. So mirages on Lake Michigan usually unfold on weeks like this. They're most common on days when the wind is light, on hot days when Lake Michigan is still cold, and it's most likely to appear as an image floating above the horizon, which you can see on the right-hand side of your screen there.
Here's an even further example where a city could be seen at a great distance.
We do have a rare view of Milwaukee for you. It comes from the other side of Lake Michigan. Now check out this picture. It's of the city lights that were taken last Thursday night in Muskegon, Michigan, some 70 miles away from Milwaukee. So why does Milwaukee look so close? Well, scientists have a name for it, but it's best explained as simply a mirage.
It is cool.
Oh,
I know if Jesse,
that is amazing.
If Jesse Richter were not off today, she would tell us the exact
She'd have some more
term.
details on that, yes.
This is a photograph of Milwaukee taken from Michigan. At a distance of 80 miles, the top of the highest building in Milwaukee should be 3,102 feet below the horizon. Here's a horizon test done by a user known as BMLSB69. In this experiment, he has a camera set up which is filming 3 distant oil platforms. One platform is at a distance of 11 miles, the second at 22 miles, and the third platform at a distance of 26 miles. He was filming at an elevation of 105 feet, where the camera is, and the horizon line should be at a distance of 12.6 miles. Anything beyond 12.6 miles should not be visible. This means the second and third platform should not be visible. Here we can clearly see that all 3 platforms are visible. The third platform should be 133 feet below the horizon. Did you know there's a website dedicated to photographers on who can take the farthest pictures on Earth? Beyond Horizons is a repository for photographers who can take record-breaking photos of objects being seen from very far away. It's sort of a competition on who can take the farthest picture. These people are not flat earthers, they just merely like to take long-distance photos. There are dozens of images on which shouldn't be seen using the globe model. Here's a current world record, Peak Gaspard, taken at a distance of 275 miles or 443 kilometers away. After applying the math, the very top of Peak Gaspard should be 3,700 feet below the horizon. It should be 3,700 feet below, but here we have a photo of the whole mountain. It should also be worth mentioning that buildings, mountains, clouds, airplanes, etc. never appear leaning away from us. For instance, buildings very far away should appear like they're leaning, like the Leaning Tower of Pisa, because of the curvature of the Earth. Yet buildings, mountains, clouds, airplanes, everything ever seen never even remotely appears leaning away. What do we do when the evidence that we gather contradicts the model that we've been grown up to believe? Do we allow ourselves to question our beliefs? There are literally hundreds of more tests like these which have been done. Objects are being seen further away than they should be. Flat earthers contest that we can simply see too far and there isn't any measurable curvature. There's a place in Bolivia called Salar de Uyuni, which is a salt flat. It's 100 miles wide one way and 80 miles across the other way, and it is said to be perfectly flat. Sometimes, when you're lucky, it rains here and you end up with an inch of water all over this salt flat, and it looks like a perfect mirror. Flat earthers contest that if the Earth were a sphere, then it would not look like such a mirror. Perfect reflections don't form on convex surfaces. If you're at one end of the salt flat, you can see perfectly clearly the other end 100 miles away. This is unique because it's a long distance of water without the effect of the waves and wind that you see in the sea, so you can see a whole lot further.
We just drove 70 miles into the middle of the salt flats to this island. Once we got like 50 kilometers out, you could start to see it, and it felt like we were gonna be there any minute the entire time. The depth perception here, because it's so flat, is so messed up. Also, we learned that we're super lucky with the rain situation going on, because if it rains too much, it's flooded and you can't make it to the island. But if it doesn't rain, then you don't get this beautiful mirror effect.
This next one has to do with the extreme vacuum of space being next to Earth's atmosphere. Space is considered to be one of the most extreme vacuums in existence, more powerful than any vacuum that we can recreate here on Earth. Space is a very powerful vacuum. Earth has an atmosphere. Having an atmosphere means that there's a pressure system. The question is, how does an atmosphere exist adjacent to a vacuum? Anytime two opposing pressure systems come together without some solid membrane separating them, an equilibrium is quickly achieved. Flat earthers are asking for a demonstration of two opposing pressure systems without any solid barrier between them that do not equilibrate. Since this cannot be demonstrated in any experiment, it is hard for flat earthers to believe the idea of a vast and endless vacuum of space. Flat earthers argue that those who do believe in a vacuum of space without any type of demonstrable proof are falling into a wishful thinking train of thought. Bodies of water will always seek and find their own level. This is usually one of the first things you will hear if you've ever encountered a flat earther. The idea that water does not bend or curve. In the globe Earth model, the globe is comprised of 70% of oceans. Since the globe is a sphere, with the ocean sticking to the outside of it, then the water must curve and bend. Flat earthers haven't been able to find any definite proof of the ocean's curving using various tests. The curvature of the ocean doesn't seem to be happening. Moreover, water curving and sticking to the outside of a container has not been reproduced in any experiment. Modern scientists will say that water curving and sticking to the outside of a sphere will only happen on a scale that is as large as the Earth. Basically, modern scientists are saying that water doesn't bend in small scales and only happens in a planetary condition. Since this really can't be verified, it must be taken as a belief instead of a knowing. Belief versus knowing. When you do some deep inner reflection and ask yourself, do I know the oceans are curving? Or is this something that I believe? Flat earthers really stress this type of thinking across their whole entire way of reasoning. Whether water is in a cup, a bathtub, a swimming pool, a lake, or an ocean, it's always flat and level. This is the natural physics of water and other liquids. Flat earthers say that it is unproven and unscientific theory with no observable, measurable, or repeatable evidence to claim that bodies of water can somehow bend, cling to the exterior shapes, and show bending upon their surface. Antarctica is very important to the Flat Earth. It is one of the keys to unlocking the truth or validity of the Flat Earth model. Unfortunately, Antarctica is off limits, and a treaty involving 54 nations aims to keep it restricted. The mysteries of Antarctica and why it's prohibited to independently travel to is one of the main reasons people believe in a flat Earth. It is rather strange that such grounds and laws are in place to protect ice. And then we have all these olden day maps showing Antarctica as a ring of ice instead of a continent. Something seems a bit off here. Tours do exist to visit Antarctica, and I just like to point out that these tour companies are all owned by the same parent company, and they just take you to the outer edge while under their direct supervision. Traveling further into Antarctica without the supervision of a tour company is not easily possible. Because of a lot to cover in this video, I can't go into depth on any one subject. The reasons for Antarctica being off limits is too much to say here for now. Just know that Antarctica is off limits. And despite all the wars and fighting that we do, the nations all seem to agree in this one thing. Antarctica is off limits. Whether you believe in a ball or flat earth model, I think a lot of people would agree there might be something fishy going on with Antarctica. Can you name any other treaty that hasn't been questioned for over 60 years? This is the map that we are all familiar with. It's called the Mercator projection. It's just one of many ways to show the arrangements of continents on Earth. They say there isn't a single accurate map out there. None of them are 100% accurate. The Mercator projection shows Greenland as almost the same size as Africa, when in fact Greenland is much, much smaller. There are a lot of different map projections out there. Some of them are more useful than others for specific purposes. And if you go on Wikipedia, you can see the date and person responsible for the invention of each different map projection. The earliest known globe is from 1492. Maps existed far before globes did. So what about the flat earth map? This must be something flat earthers came up with, right? No. The flat earth community has taken it upon themselves to form a flat earth model. At the center of this model is their map. The map they have chosen to use is called the azimuthal equidistant projection, sometimes called the AE map, or in this video, the flat earth map. AE maps can be traced back to the year 1000. They are older than globes. I also think it's worth pointing out that the United Nations and World Health Organization both have flat earth maps as their official logo. Flat earthers are finding this to be a little curious. Take a look at this map that was found hidden in a Japanese temple. This map is over 1,000 years old. It was found in a temple high up in the mountains in Japan. Here's a newspaper article from the Hawaiian Gazette from 1907. It says the map was believed to be made by Chinese priests 10 centuries ago. Not only is the map a flat earth map, but it shows more land and other continents. The article says it was hidden because such a map would have been destroyed by authorities. You might have noticed the differences between the normal Mercator map that we see regularly and the flat earth map. The sizes and locations of the continents are arranged much differently between the two maps. We fly east to west all the time. Thousands of flights fly east to west and west to east every day. Circumnavigating the Earth east to west on a globe would look something like this. And circumnavigating the Earth on a flat map would look something like this. As you can see, both models can equally support the idea of east to west or west to east circumnavigation. What about north to south circumnavigation? This is where we run into problems. North to south circumnavigation does not work on a flat Earth, because once you reach Antarctica, you'll just end up going further south and never return to where you started. North to south circumnavigation theoretically works on the globe, except that we rarely, if ever, do it. It is claimed that only a few people throughout history have circumnavigated the Earth from pole to pole. But flat earthers are really skeptical on trusting these claims. Circumnavigating from pole to pole has been done less than 10 times throughout all of history. Flat earthers are contesting that the people who have claimed to have done this are part of a campaign to fake these trips in order to sell the idea of a globe. Whether these trips have happened or not isn't clear, but it is clear that these trips rarely do ever happen. The official reason for the lack of circumnavigation north to south is because it's too cold and expensive to fly over Antarctica. Because north to south circumnavigation rarely, if ever, happens, flat earthers see this as a proof, reinforcing their model. With all that being said, there is a small community of flat earthers who do not endorse the flat earth model, and I wish they would get more attention. I personally think all flat earthers should abandon and stop using the azimuthal equidistant projection as their model, because it is a failed model. A few reasons to support these claims are: the sun must travel 70% faster between summer and winter, but this is not observed. The sun rises in the southeast in Chile, South Africa, and Australia during winter months, and this is not compatible with the AE map. The sun travels straight during the equinox and not in a circle. We can see the moon in light and in darkness at the same time on different areas of Earth. I know, I'm not going into much detail here, so you might not follow along. I just felt compelled to include this section because I personally do not endorse the AE map. But I felt it was necessary to include this section because the large majority of flat earthers are following this model. So why are we even here discussing what the Earth looks like when we have absolute proof of what the Earth looks like with pictures? There are thousands of pictures of the Earth. Or is there?
Last month, for the first time since 1972, NASA released a blue marble, a single snapshot of the Earth taken from outer space.
Most of the pictures that you see of the Earth are composites. They aren't single-shot images. Instead, they are created from a collection of data which space agencies piece together to make a picture. A lot of the times, they're collecting flat images and then later wrapping this data around a computer-generated ball. Here's NASA analyst explaining how he created the famous 2002 image of Earth, which was the default background on original iPhones.
Blue Marble 2.0. NASA's Rob Simon made this. Simon's job is...
It's primarily taking data and making pictures out of it.
That's what this is, a composite of data sets from several different instruments translated into a picture. And the tricky part here was the weather.
So we actually had to take clouds out.
They stashed the clouds for later, went onto the ocean. That came from an instrument that measures phytoplankton in the sea.
Where it was low, I colored it dark blue because they're low mostly in mid-oceans. And then where it was a little bit higher, it was like a little bit brighter green.
Then add the clouds back in.
There's a small problem with it because there's a very slight gap in between each orbit.
So some of those are painted on.
It is photoshopped, but it's has to be.
Then
there was another layer to sort of simulate the atmosphere.
And then there's this little bright spot.
It's called the specular highlight. So it's the reflection of sunlight off of water.
Those are the pieces, but you can't just slap them all together.
It just didn't look realistic. It looks kind of flat, or the clouds are sort of too see-through. So I just hit Command Z a lot.
There's artistry to creating the world.
What I imagine it to be. Unfortunately, I'm not an astronaut. I've never been to space. But I've looked at these images over and over again, trying to sort of get the essence of it. It is photoshopped, but it's has to be. It is photoshopped, but it's has to be.
When examining pictures of the Earth, we are finding some anomalies which really raise an eyebrow. For instance, this is an official NASA photo of the Earth which appears to have the word sex within the clouds. Furthermore, we are finding that the clouds that you are seeing in some of these images are just pasted on. Here, we can see that the clouds are duplicated, copy and pasted to appear to look like real clouds. Because the photos of the Earth are admittedly created in Photoshop, this has a lot of flat earthers to be skeptical on if Earth is really a sphere floating in space. Flat earthers are also finding a lot of variance between the different photos of the Earth. It's not just pictures of the Earth either. NASA made headlines recently because they discovered that the TRAPPIST-1 system had 7 Earth-like planets within it. 3 of these planets are within a habitable zone. The image they released looked like this. Most people see this in the news and assume, oh wow, that's incredible. But most people don't look into how this image came to be. What instruments were used to determine this? What data are they basing this on? This image was created from data which looked like this. NASA will admit that this is just an artist's rendition of what they think those planets could look like. We've all seen pictures of people in space, doing spacewalks, interviews in space stations, and even pictures of the Earth from space. These images and video were to be taken as undisputable proof that we are indeed on a ball. The final nail in the coffin to seal the deal that we are indeed on a ball. Remember now, you've likely only heard one side of the discussion. Hypothetically speaking, if an error were to be made in camera, would the mainstream media show you? Flat Earthers are saying that all of the photos and videos that you see in space and in the space station are heavily doctored or just plain fake. There are hours and hours of video dedicated to this very one subject. However, because of time and brevity, I am going to go over what I thought were a few compelling clips from space agencies.
Hello. Hello. Been here once before.
Nice to meet you. Good. How are you?
Pleasure. Hello.
This was a special day for NASA because George Bush Sr. visited NASA headquarters. Houston headquarters doesn't often get press attention like this. Was it a mistake that the blue screen was left on one of their monitors? Why do they even need a blue screen? Flat Earthers are saying that it is because they are using it to fake the object that needs to be floating. Flat Earthers are suggesting that NASA is faking low gravity using wire harnesses. In these next few clips, it shows what appears to be an invisible wire harness attached to the astronauts. In this clip, when he tucks down to pick something up, it appears that there may be a wire protruding from the outside of his shirt. In this clip, you'll see a guy float by in the background who appears to have a wire harness around his waist and legs. There are those who claim that some of the objects which you see astronauts handle are nothing more than digital objects. The objects can literally be teleported in because they are not really there. With virtual reality technology, it is possible for you to grab and manipulate digital objects just like they were there in front of you, and then have them appear on a different screen. Some people think that the digital object which he's supposed to be holding wasn't teleported in on the clip which you're viewing right now. This video shows the astronaut being faded out before making it out of the viewer's sight. This would only be possible if the video had a green screen layer for the astronaut and then a separate layer for the background.
So with the special shape of this cup, and you can see I'm continuing to suck the coffee out, or actually sip the coffee, because we're no longer sucking out of a bag now. We're drinking from a cup.
This video is showing an astronaut drinking liquid coffee from a plastic bag in zero gravity. NASA skeptics are claiming that the coffee is instead a digital layer superimposed over the plastic bag. The reasoning is because a glitch happened when the bag floated away and the coffee layer did not track the bag properly. Wire harnesses and green screens are what flat earthers claim to be the most common method of faking space. They also claim there's another, less common method which is sometimes used, using zero-G planes. If you have $7,000, you can purchase a ticket on one of these zero-G planes. The planes will basically fly down at a very steep angle, which gives the impression that you are weightless or in zero gravity while you're inside of the plane. Since you're falling, the walls are falling, and the roof is falling, it's like being in zero gravity. Notice what hair looks like when you're inside of the zero-G plane.
Is this a hoax? Are you really in space still?
See the hair? See the hair?
NASA skeptics are claiming that they're just perming the women's hair or giving it a bunch of hairspray to give it a big poofy look.
So, I mean, like on the space station, how many of these would you have?
7, because we have 7 windows.
What happens if you get a leak on that?
then you have a leak.
You just have a leak.
And what you would do
is...
You
lose air.
Yeah, you would probably seal the whole cupola off. And then there's probably a plan, I don't know off the top of my head, but there's probably a plan for replacing the mechanism. Might require a spacewalk.
Astronaut Chris Hadfield tweeted this image of a hole which happened in the ISS. The only thing is, this image is an old image which was used as an album cover for a band called Remedy Drive. When an object reaches a certain altitude, it is then considered to be in Earth orbit. We have 3 categories of orbit depending on how high the object goes. Low Earth orbit is for objects which go less than 1,200 miles up. Medium Earth orbit is for objects below 22,000 miles up, and high Earth orbit is for objects more than 22,000 miles up. Although we allegedly went to the moon in 1969, we are not able to go anymore. The technology has been lost. With our current technology, we are only able to send people into low Earth orbit. That means humans can't go past 1,200 miles up.
One thing I really want your generation to embrace is that the Earth is a closed system. We cannot leave the Earth. There's no place to go. The Earth is a closed system.
Now, we only can fly in Earth orbit. That's the farthest that we can go.
The kinds of technologies that we're testing out on Space Station are definitely helping us with our goals of going beyond low Earth orbit.
Early in the next decade, a set of crewed flights will test and prove the systems required for exploration beyond low Earth orbit.
And this is really the beginning, I think, of human beings leaving low Earth orbit.
This picture is drawn to scale to show you how far away the moon really is. Remember now, we can only travel at most 1,200 miles today. In 1969, we were able to make it 283,000 miles to the moon. But nowadays, we can't leave low Earth orbit. Those who are skeptical about the moon missions are asking NASA to go over the original photographs, video, and telemetry data from the original Apollo missions. Unfortunately, NASA accidentally destroyed this data and the technology to go back to the moon.
I'd go to the moon in a nanosecond. The problem is we don't have the technology to do that anymore. We used to, but we destroyed that technology, and it's a painful process to build it back again.
I haven't seen anything that indicates the telemetry data is even in existence, and as I said, even if we had it, we don't have the machines to play it back.
Unfortunately, I'm afraid I can't really give you much of a clue as to where this data ended up and whether it still exists or not.
It's not just these people saying this though. This is an official NASA statement. The tapes, footage, and telemetry data is gone, and it's a painful process to rebuild this technology. To be clear, we no longer lack the technical know-how to go back to the moon. We forgot how to do it. Let me ask you, when in the history of forever has technology gone backwards? According to NASA, it would cost too much for us to rebuild the technology that went to the moon. Flat Earthers see this as a huge red flag.
They just start making stuff up.
Yeah.
Like that Neil Armstrong guy. Have you seen him on the talk shows?
Neil Armstrong, you mean the first man to walk on the moon?
Talk about a fish story.
Yeah.
Man, and they're buying it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Most flat earthers believe the sun and moon to be lights in the sky of an unknown material, if they are even material at all. There's a lot of discussion on what they could be made of. Some ideas range from electromagnetic phenomenon, plasma, projections, a facade, or something else entirely. In flat earth theory, the moon's light is not a reflection of the sun and is instead its own light source. Most flat earthers believe the moon to be non-terra firma, meaning it's not a physical object you can walk on. A whole lot of discussion and experiments are being done on whether the moon is its own light source or not. The Bible does suggest that the moon is its own light source, and flat earthers are taking it upon themselves to test this. Flat earthers believe the sun and moon are a duality, yin and yang. The sun produces a warm light, and the moon, being its opposite dual nature, produces a cold light. Yes, you heard me right. There are people conducting experiments on the temperature of the moon's light, and it goes against everything we've been taught in school. Flat earthers are finding that when the moon's light is measured with a thermometer, particularly on a full moon, that emits a colder temperature than the shade.
Wow, it's way warmer in the shade.
Check out this scientist being interviewed by an Australian news outlet in 1965.
What is your theory? Well, it is by now rather more than a theory. 10 or 11 years ago, I stated to various scientists that the moon is not a piece of rock, but it is a plasma phenomenon, a cosmic plasma, and that this fact will eventually be confirmed. I made certain predictions which were already confirmed in 1958, and the situation now is coming close to a complete confirmation.
While we are on the subject of a moon, I'd like to show you a really cool phenomenon which has been making waves across the internet. It's called a lunar wave. The clip being displayed right now is of the original lunar wave, which was first discovered by a user known as Crow in 2012. Flat earthers feel like the world has been misdescribed. There currently isn't any known explanation for this interesting phenomenon. Here's another lunar wave, which was captured by a user known as Deceptive Little Universe in 2019. The lunar wave has been filmed over a dozen times by people who like to film the night sky. Because most flat earthers believe the moon to be non-terra firma, they don't support the idea of a moon landing. Really quick, here are the things you need to believe to accept the moon landings as truth. This is Apollo Lunar Module. This here is a craft which flew 282,000 miles to the moon in extreme temperatures, both hot and cold, and then was able to fly back. Flat earthers have a hard time believing that this thing went to the moon. Its structural integrity does not resemble other high-end craft, and it's questionable on the materials used to create it. This is a 7,500 pound thruster. Notice how much dust this thing kicks up. Look at its power, heat. Look at the size and heavy-duty construction of this thing. The Apollo lunar lander had a bigger thruster at 10,000 pounds. There's a lot of discussion about how the lunar lander did not throw up any dust, nor create any sort of blast crater from when it had to gently land on the surface of the moon. This is the moon buggy which was sent up with the astronauts. Moon landing skeptics have a hard time believing that NASA would send up such a heavy object which didn't appear to serve much of a scientific purpose. It also would have been very dangerous if an astronaut were to ride over a heavy bump and possibly rip, tear, or get injury on this dangerous moon mission. Then we have the moon rock, which was given as a gift to the Dutch National Museum. This was a rock which was allegedly taken from the moon during the Apollo missions. When the rock was examined, it was turned out to be a fake since it was made of petrified wood. One last thing on the moon missions, which isn't so commonly talked about, it has to do with human behavior. They say that body language and facial expressions are responsible for a large part of our communication. Can you imagine going to the moon when it's never been done before? I don't know about you, but for me, I get nervous even if the airplane I'm in makes a bump. And airplanes are statistically really safe. Can you imagine going 25,000 miles per hour and never been used technology before? That's 13 times faster than a bullet. Even walking on the moon, I'd be nervous as we only have so much oxygen, batteries, fuel, and we still gotta fly back. Then, making it all the way back after landing in the ocean, the entire world is thrilled. Celebrations are all around. You've literally made history. Take a look at interviews or speeches from when other people achieve accomplishments. It's almost always matched with pride, esteem, and excitement. When the Apollo astronauts came back from the moon, there was a press conference. I'm just going to run this clip right here so you can see why some flat earthers might be a little suspicious on the validity of their claim.
Neil?
It was our pleasure to have participated in one great adventure. It's an adventure that took place not just in the month of July, but rather one that took place in the last decade. Things that occurred on and about the moon. We will use a number of films and slides which most of you have already seen, and with the intent of pointing out some of the things that we observed on the spot which may not be obvious to those of you who are looking at them here from the surface of Earth. The flight, as you know, started promptly.
Many of us and many other people in many places have speculated on the meaning of this first landing on another body in space. Would each of you give us your estimate of what is the meaning of this to all of us?
You want to try that? After you.
Most flat earthers have spent a lot of time researching the moon landing and have come to the conclusion that we did not go. So then they're left with the question, why would they fake it? We've gone over a lot of reasons that support the idea of a flat earth today. It just so happens that pretty much all ancient civilizations have believed in a flat earth cosmology. Just to name a few other societies who believe in a geocentric cosmology are ancient Greek, Navajo, Babylonian, Japanese, Persian, Viking, Indian, Mayan, Inca, Hebrew, Chinese, Celtic, Sumerian, Romans, and African civilizations. All believed in a flat earth. Year after year, night after night, we see the same stars in the beautiful night sky. Modern science will tell us that the stars are light years away, a distance so astronomically far that your brain can't even comprehend the distance that these alleged massive objects are. Flat earthers have a different take on what the stars are. Given what I've told you so far, you might not be surprised to hear that flat earthers feel like they've been lied to. Since they've been lied to, they don't know who to trust anymore. They go back all the way to their original mindset that they had as a child and review what they believe and what they know. Why do they believe what they do? A lot of times we've been taught things when we're really young, before we've developed critical thinking skills. When we allow ourselves to come back to it with our adult mind to question things, sometimes we can find new revelations. Flat earthers put a huge emphasis on what their senses tell them. They will say that their senses tell them that the earth appears to be flat. If no one told them otherwise, they would likely assume it to be flat and motionless. They feel like flat earth is an observation and not a claim. An example of a claim would be earth spins or earth curves. Since the burden of proof lies on the person making the claim, they continue to trust their senses until further evidence can reveal new information. Flat earthers, when trusting their senses, see the sun and moon to be the same size. But it's modern science who comes along and says, no. The sun is 400 times larger, but also, coincidentally, 400 times further away. Don't trust your senses. Trust us. We have the answers. Your senses are wrong. Flat earthers' senses tell them that the moon doesn't appear to spin, and that is why we only see one side of the moon. It's only modern science who comes along and says, oh no, the moon does spin. It just so happens that it spins at the same exact rate that we do. So we only get to see one side. But the stars appear to be moving above us. But then modern science will say, in actuality, it is we who are moving. Don't trust what you see or feel. Trust what we tell you. When we see shooting stars, they always come down from the sky.
This evening, it's a special full moon tonight. Oh my goodness, look at that. We just caught ourselves a falling star. Make a wish.
Flat earthers contest that if we were indeed on a globe, then we should see shooting stars coming from all sorts of directions. Some going horizontal and some flying up from the horizon. But wait, what is a star? What do flat earthers think of stars? I want to preface this by saying that I hope one day each one of you has the opportunity to look at the stars with a good pair of binoculars, or even better, a telescope. so you can witness this yourself. Until then, I'm going to show you a collection of what stars look like from a good amateur telescope. Some stars look like amoebas, some change colors from red to blue to green, others appear to be underwater. Some stars have legit holes in the middle of them. Cymatics is the study of how sound affects matter. NASA provides us with CGI illustrations of stars and planets which do not look anything like what we can actually observe ourselves. And even our own sun never twinkles, like how we see the stars rapidly doing. What about the planets? Are those also flat? In the night sky, all of the stars move at the same speed and will form perfect circles if you do a time lapse. Some stars move differently though. While all the stars are moving at the same angles, these other stars are sort of weaving in and out and doing their own thing. In ancient times, we called these other stars wandering stars, but nowadays we call them planets. They, the planets, resemble stars in our sky except that they will perform their own elliptical motion throughout the sky. Modern science tells us that the planets are much closer and not as big as stars. They are terra firma, meaning something we could land or touch. With flat Earth, planets are like stars, lights in the sky, except they have their own motion paths. Earlier I showed you footage of the high altitude balloons. One thing flat earthers can't explain is the fact that once we reach a certain altitude, then all the stars in the sky disappear. The stars are a really interesting phenomenon, and the flat earth does not have an answer for what they are outside of lights in our night sky. They do have some theories though. I personally love it when science says they don't know how something works. I think it's perfectly fine to revel in the mystery of things. Are we meant to know the answer to everything? There are a lot of unknowns with the flat earth model. I personally would rather not know than know the wrong thing. There is a phenomenon that modern science will admit that they don't know how it works. It's called sonoluminescence. Basically, if you have a tank of water or liquid, and if you make a bubble in it, and then you shoot a sound wave at this bubble, the bubble will first collapse into itself and then get super hot while emitting a bright light. We're creating an immense amount of energy from just a bubble and a sound wave, and it looks like a star.
He says, praise him, sun and moon, and praise him, all you shining stars. That's not just a poetic idea. That's really happening because stars don't just shine, stars also sing. It's singing. The stars are singing to him. I recently stumbled on 47 Tuc. It's a beautiful cluster of stars. We'll show you the picture of it here. There are 12 of these super giant blue stars in there, but the things that are of interest to us tonight are these millisecond pulsars. And right now tonight, while we're sitting in this room, the 16 recorded millisecond pulsars in 47 Tuck are making this sound right now. That one's a little out of tune. Beautiful. Who knew? No, God has his own string section.
$56 million a day, of course, you've heard that 56 million times probably this weekend. But we need to talk about how big the space economy is, okay? The video game industry, $137 billion, one of the biggest industries that there is. We can add those all together, combo of everything music that you've ever seen music, home entertainment, movies, box office, Hollywood, video games. That includes on your apps, on your phone, Xbox, PlayStation. That's the space industry. $410 billion. So when people ask, why the lie? Well, what good does it do? What difference does it make? Well, it makes a huge difference to those that are involved.
Why the lie? Why would they lie? With modern scientism, they want you to think that we came from nothing in a big bang. That something came from nothing and it's just happenstance that we exist. They want us to not understand our origin and to go on thinking that life is meaningless. That we are one in septillion other planets floating through infinite space. We aren't very special because there's a possibility of so many other planets and life forms. Instead of everything being random, with the flat earth, it puts us at the center of creation. The sun and stars are revolving around us. We are at the center. Suddenly we matter. We are special. Also, if the idea of a dome is true, then that kind of points towards intelligent design. Who designed it? When you wrap up all the land and put it on a ball, there's nowhere left to go. Everything has been discovered already. What's beyond the 60-degree parallel line? What's at the edge? What's it made of? If we can lie to you about where you really are, where you really came from, if we can convince you that what you see and perceive is wrong, and to instead trust what we tell you to be true, then that sets an easy foundation for us to control you. The three biggest reasons that I see for why the lie be for control, for money, or to hide God, to hide that you're special. At the end of the day, Flat Earth moves people to God, and then it convinces people that they're special, that they matter. And I think that's a good thing. To quickly summarize the points that we went over, number one, we went over the Flat Earth model and how it differs from a heliocentric model, how the Earth is stationary, surrounded by an ice wall and possible dome. Number two, how the horizon will remain level with your eyes as we rise in altitude. Also, how it appears to be noticeably flat when viewed from a high altitude weather balloons, reaching altitudes as high as 170,000 feet. Number three, how there doesn't seem to be any measurable curvature on this Earth. Additionally, objects are being seen much further away than they should when applying globe math. Number four, how there hasn't been any sort of demonstrable proof of a vacuum, such as space, existing adjacent to a pressure system, such as Earth's atmosphere. Number five, we went over the natural physics of water and how water will always seek and find its own level. Water does not bend, curve, or stick and cling to the exterior shapes, such as a ball. Number 6. The mysteries of Antarctica, the Antarctic Peace Treaty, and the rules which highly restrict travel to this forbidden area. Number 7. The different types of maps, and how circumnavigation would work on a flat and globe Earth. Number 8. Various clips from space agencies that showed questionable clips of astronauts being in space, how photos of the Earth are created. Number 9. What the ancient civilizations thought about all of this. Number 10. How stars fit into all of this, what the sun, moon, and luminaries above us are in a flat Earth model? And number 11, why would they lie? It was not my intention for you to believe this yourself. That was not the goal of this video. My intention is for you to have some understanding or compassion if you come across someone who believes in something like this, or something else, something different from what you believe. Sometimes we will judge, mock, or ridicule people when we have no understanding of their beliefs. In these crazy times, I think it's so important for us to be kind to each other, even with our differences. Whether we acknowledge it or not, humankind has a moral stake on being kind. The word itself reminds us of this absolute truth. Normally, I would tell people to do your own research or look into this yourself. However, I feel hesitant to say this now, only because of such heavy censorship of Flat Earth. It's no longer possible to just hop onto Google or YouTube and find legitimate discussion on this subject. You'll need to know a direct link to an actual source, since the actual sources no longer appear in searches. I recommend joining a group or online discussion if you'd like to know more. Sometimes the truth can be found in the reactions. If Flat Earth is so crazy and outlandish, then why do they need to go to such great lengths to discredit it? More importantly, why do they need to censor it? If the Earth is a ball and true, then truth should not fear investigation. My hope is that someday more money and research can go into the Flat Earth discussion, if society can allow themselves to question their beliefs. There are issues with the Flat Earth map and model. There are issues with the globe model. I myself still remain skeptical and will continue to remain open to many possibilities. If we can remove our ego and allow ourselves to be teachable, then exploring by learning new things can be quite fun, even if they go against our own worldview. This has been a fun project and I have learned so much. It really has given me some perspective on why people believe in a flat Earth and what has brought them to these conclusions. At the end of the day, be kind, open your mind, and much love to all.